So, the system domain. This is where you got the traditional Linux stuff. So the system directory, like the others, requires administrative rights. This is where you have a lot of log files, so a lot of information needed here. There's var log, there's your system logs, you got var db, and you have the cups log where things are printed. There's something called a system sleep image, which I have not heard more about. I wonder if this has a RAM copy, like a hybrid file that you could investigate, and I'm not aware of any tool that will do that for free. One problem with Mac stuff is there are very few tools that will do anything for free. You typically have to pay for a black bag. Because Mac keeps changing everything with every version, and they change it a lot, and there is not enough people willing to write free tools for the latest version. The free tools are typically like 5 versions back. Anything that works on modern Macs, you typically have to pay thousands of bucks for, which I'm thinking is something I should order. I should order a copy or two of Black Bag, because Black Bag is the equivalent of FTK for the Mac. The thing that runs on the Mac and does acquisition and lets you break into all these structures. The Black Bag is the company, and it costs several thousand bucks, just like FTK in case, and it's worth it. And I should put it in the next order for the lab and get a couple copies of that. Anyway, so then there's the user domain. This is where you have your documents, your desktop, your own applications folder, pictures, and all this jazz, and your own user-specific trash. These are all the things in your user profile. And so specific things to look for, just like remember the Windows chapter, about half of the chapter was now specific things like USB store, user assist, and all these particularly handy things that people have learned to find here. So Apple uses LDAP for enterprise management, which most Macs are not doing in my experience, and it directory services local user management. All right, anyway, so directory service does not use the Unix authentication files like etspassword and etsgroup. They have gotten their own system that puts the user accounts in SQLite databases and binary property lists, plist files. I don't know why, but they chose not to use the standard Unix login system, and by the way, what they did was much, much more secure as far as password hashing. I had no idea how extreme the password hashing was. You're going to see. So private var dbs local is where the directory service data is, and in the subfolder nodes default is where the password hashes are, and I've seen these before, but I didn't get the subtleties as much as I did this time. To see the password hash, you have to go to that path, private var dbds local nodes default users, and then you have to use plutil to extract the data from this binary file. And this plutil gets the shadow hash data, and all this garbage here is the password hash. It is in a strange encoded format, so you have to use another program to unwrap it from that. And when you do, this is what it looks like, and it's pretty awesome. The number of iterations is 49,751. The algorithm is SHA-512. It has a salt, which is really long, looks like 256 bits of salt or something. And this is the hash. And I've never heard of such a thing in my life. I mean, all Linux systems I use have 5,000 rounds of SHA-512. This really has 49,000 rounds of SHA-512. So cracking this is no joke. Someone's not going to get your Mac password from this hash anytime soon unless you really used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's very impressive. And this number of iterations seems to be different on every Mac too. It seems to be a semi-random number. Most other people just settle for a standard number like 5,000 and use it all the time, but these guys are not messing around. All right, so you got aliases. There's a lot of other configuration options. Here's options for mail. There's Kerberos information, which I think would only be used if you're on a network with Windows systems, loopback network, and Sharepoints, which are the directories that you're choosing if you're doing file shares. You can share files various different ways. SMB is the most common because that will share with Windows systems. Server message block. You can also use AFP, which shares between Apple systems. I think it's Apple File Protocol or something like that. Then you got a sqlindex. This maintains the creation and modification time for the files in the directory structure, and it's automatically backed up to a gzip tar, which is pretty good because you might find things in there that have been deleted. So here you can see when a share was created, whether an account existed, and here's the kind of things you'll find in there. Every user account has this stuff. It has your picture. You see your picture next to your name. So in here is a JPEG picture, and it's got your user ID and a hint for your password, and it's got the hash data, which has that password hash that could in principle be cracked. This is the stuff in the user accounts database structure, which replaces what would have been an etspassword and etshadow and etsgroup. And then there are Sharepoints, which show the status of shares for the things Apple Filing Protocol, Server Message Block, or FTP, and it just shows you if they are sharing folders when they were created. but most people aren't sharing folders. You've got trash and deleted files, which are pretty complicated and surprising. You've got a volume-wide trash folder, user-specific trash folder, and a private trash folder, for a private folder for root user. And if you put in a USB stick, it creates a trash can on the USB stick and puts files in there, which is pretty interesting. So this all sounds wonderful in that when the perp tries to delete something, they might not know all this, and there might be stuff in some of these trash cans of what they thought they got rid of. And by the way, the trashes, it goes in a file with your user ID. You remember this user ID, the same things in Windows, you have 1001, 1002, or 501, 502. So this is your user ID, and it stores a different trash can for each user ID, which is mighty handy, because then you'll know who deleted that file. You got auditing options. There's an open base security module which can run, and it will log all these things, high access network connections and execution of applications. Unfortunately, by default, it doesn't store much in the way of logs. It stores only basic information that isn't much use. The same thing is true of Microsoft. Until I think Windows Vista, the log auditing was turned off entirely by default. In Vista, they turned it on, but it only logs very little. So it's something you can turn on if you're in a high security environment and keep better audit logs. But if you don't turn it on, the audit logs are pretty much useless. You can go in here and put these things in the configuration file, and then it will create many, many log entries for everything you do. And this is something you might do to record suspicious activity once you have reason to suspect it. All right, there's a lot of helper services, just like there are in Windows, running in the background doing things. Here's a few of them. Each one of them typically has a SQLite database and a property list. That's the standard. And so Airport D handles network connections for the wireless network. You've got something for the Find My Mac service, the copy and paste, the sharing daemon, and spin dump, for whatever that is, reporting application errors and hangs. Yeah?
Where are these things we're talking about? Or these could be anywhere?
These are processes. So they're running process services in the background. So you'll see them with PSAux at the command line and with Activity Monitor in the GUI, analogous to Microsoft's Task Manager. And where they launch from, I think they can launch from a variety of folders, and I'm not quite sure where they generally go. So here's Airport D, and if you go to, Airport D runs in a sandbox, a lot of processes do. So then the sandbox is configured in this file, user share sandbox, and you can then go and do plutil to look at its plist. Remember, every file typically is controlled with a plist of settings and a database of other things that may be storing. So there's this thing, library preferences, system configuration, com Apple Airport preferences.plist. So that is keeping track of the wireless connections that are being made. And you can use plutility to look inside there, and plutil will open up this binary file and print it in a usable way. And this I thought was pretty cute. There's like 85 of these Wi-Fi networks on my computer, and I look at this, and this is obviously ASCII. Those are printable ASCII characters. I don't know why they don't just, plist doesn't print them out, but you can just put them in a hex editor. This is the name of the network I use most. That's my network at home. Here's the network I want to go. They're all here. This is your 80 favorite networks in readable text, just ASCII. You just have to. Pretty obvious, yeah.
plutil is what you use also to get the hash, is that right?
Yes. The hash, I think it was a different command, but similar. To get the hash, it was also plutil, yeah. So plutil is what opens plist files. Plist files are binary, but plutil will open them and convert them into XML or other formats. So that's the name of the file, sandbox.plist. And if you don't give it a command, it will turn it into this sort of JSON-looking stuff.
I mean, the dash P option is what?
Yeah, dash P is, I think, just what specifies the file.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, properties might be. Yeah, it's worth doing, man. You can do a lot of fun things with it. And I found there's a couple of links in the links on their page that show you exactly how to extract and crack password hashes, which is kind of fun. Although, like I say, cracking these hashes is really no fun, because they're really seriously hashed. You're only going to get it if they choose one of the top 100 passwords in any reasonable amount of time. So by the way, later on down in that file, I found that it had SSID string. So by grepping for SSID string, I can actually get readable list of all the places I've been. And you know, I think I'm like anybody else, you can totally tell everything I've been doing. You can also just look at my website to find out everything I'm doing, but it totally has every conference I went to, every hotel, every airport I went to. Yeah.
Is this, you know how sometimes you can like clear out the Wi-Fi? Just hang on to it even if it's like deleted from those GUI tools?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I'd have to experiment to see, and I think there might be a backup someplace. So that's, it's a good question. I don't know how easy it would be to clean this out and how much would be left if you tried to clean it out. All right. So what Unix feature is missing in Mac OS X? I'll quit at 25. All right, and that is password. It does not use the password file or the groups file. That's where Unix stores its passwords, but Mac stores them elsewhere. All right, which one of these will manage connections to wireless networks? All right, and that's Airport D. The demon in the background managing this. This is famously insecure on Macs. Every time you turn on the machine, it broadcasts the last 5 access points you've been using in plain text, so anybody can tell what you've been doing. It's a considerable security flaw in Macs, but no one's ever been motivated to fix it because it improves performance. If you go back to one of those 5 networks, it will connect much faster, and that is what most people care about. And it is faster because it skips most of the handshakes in DHCP. It tries to use the same IP address I used last time on this network, and usually that works, so it's much faster to connect. That's what they say. In practice, I often notice it being slower, but anyway, theoretically, it is intended to improve performance. Where are the log of all your network connections? I'm going to close at 25, and I may change my mind about this.
Right, yes.
I think I was looking for OpenVSM, but I think OpenVSM does not do it by default.
Pick that.
I think only if you turn on all this jazz.
That's what I put, because
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. for-
Yeah, it will do it if you set this fancy thing, but it doesn't do it by default, so I'm not going to grade that one. Then Airport D doesn't get the wired connections, only the wireless ones. What's that?
And I said, what if we got it?
There, you can't have got it because there's no right answer. And this is not the CIS.
What should it be then?
If it was the CISSP exam,
What's the right answer then?
well, I thought the right answer would be D, but I was wrong. By default, even D won't do it. By default, nothing does. Anyway, so
All network.
as far as I know, and there's a whole lot of the Mac OS X that has not been that well reverse engineered and documented. So there could very well be more things in there that we just don't know about. Anyway, so system and application logging, you'll find a lot of artifacts in here in places like private var log or library logs. Most of them are plain text logs, only a few of them are binary. So here's the ASL logs here. These things are pretty fun. The ASL logs are like Syslog. They're storing system events. Yeah,
Which operating system is this kind of text up to date to?
is what?
You were saying that like the operating system changes so much that they don't keep up with it. So
Yes. The free tools I know are from 10.5 and earlier. And we're now up to 10.10 or 10.11.
But like this text.
Oh, this stuff is up to 10.10.
Okay. This
The book is very accurate, yes. A very important question. You have old Mac information is pretty useless. The Mac changes a lot, they change it really fast, and they abandon the old versions, don't support them anymore.
I
Yeah.
noticed a new version they're putting Siri on the Mac so you can like talk to it.
Yeah,
So I was yeah.
And that would be awesome. because it probably sends that up to a server.
Well, it means it's listening to you all the time, waiting for you to talk.
Yes,
To you.
so that's awesome for us.
Not awesome. Well, it's awesome.
That means there's all this dividends. Well, it just depends on who you are. If you want to find out what people have been doing, it's awesome. So this is pretty cute. If you go in these ASL files, it's storing the syslog, and it's storing in this format, which is kind of interesting. And what this is, it's the G is group and the U is user. So it stores the user ID and the group ID, and it stores a separate syslog for these things. So there's things the group are doing, and somehow the user is not doing. I don't quite understand that. Then there's user in the group, and then there's user out of the group, and so on. But anyway, that's the game here. Here's these logs are created and stored, and you can open them with syslog. So you can use syslog -f to reveal the contents of it, and then you can choose one of these things. So here is user 501 without the group membership being relevant. And then I looked for credentials because I found a connection to Bluetooth peer, and I found the connection to a wireless network here. So that was pretty cute. So this thing did store some information. It's not very thorough, and a lot of it is hard to understand. So I would have to do real experiments to find out exactly what it's getting. But some logging is here. Like in the Unix syslog, I noticed the same thing. I often have trouble, and I look in syslog, and most of the time, nothing in syslog helps me because it's not logging the particular thing that's causing my problem, but sometimes you're lucky. So there's a bunch of these. Then there's more things here. There's these BB files. It keeps, see these files, let me just open this folder live here. Syslog private var log ASL. Let's see if I got it here. Okay, let's go there. Private var. By the way, I should mention, when I started playing with password hashes, I translated the password hash file to XML running as the root user, and I didn't know it translated the real password hash file, not a copy. Be careful. I translated it back before I rebooted, and it seemed to survive this, but I was thinking, I think I just bricked my Mac again. So, you know, messing around with the real password files as root is not that wise. By the way, if you copy them in another folder, they don't open anymore. It's really rude. But anyway, they are somehow context dependent. But anyway, like I say, remember you are running as root, and those are the live files, so don't write to anything unless you really know what you're doing. All right, so there's ASL. Now I have to do ls-l. So here are these files, and it's kind of fun. You can see right now it's November 16. So here's the latest stuff. November 16 has a few of these in just different categories, different users. This is one of these is me. One of them would be root, which I think would be U0, and I have no idea what these are. Probably system accounts or something, doing things in the background like Dropbox or something. So doing these things. So there's a few for today, then yesterday. It seems to only keep it for about 1 week. It looks like a 1 week rotation. But some things are kept longer. And that's what these BB files are. These BB files are once every month. 11, 20, 11, 30, 12, at the end of every month. 131, 231, and notice they're from the future, 2017. For some ungodly reason, the actual time this file was saved was February 8, 2016. So it put here February 28, 2017. This is off by a year. These are a year's log worth of the past. And they're pretty small files, so it doesn't save all the syslog entries. It takes the critical ones, primarily authentication entries, and it logs them for a year in this goofy format and puts the file name off by a year. I'm thinking a bug Mike didn't bother fixing, but anyway, yeah.
Do you think that's like how they decide when to delete them? They only keep them for a year and then they're like...
I'm assuming it's just a year because it's so nicely 7 days, and this is so nicely 1 year. I think it just keeps it for a fixed period of time instead of a fixed size. But anyway, this is interesting. So these things are your long-term archives of syslog back for a year. This is your recent activity that only goes back for a week. And the third category is these aux things. And those aux things are backtraces for things that have crashed, like crash dumps. And so there they are, November 9, and it looks like that also only goes for 1 week. So anyway, that's what's stored in there, and you view them with syslog.
And they're
Yeah.
plain text?
What's that? No, they're not plain text at all. They're binary files, and you have to use a tool to open them, which is syslog.
But what does that comment on your slide say, where it says plain text?
Oh,
What is that?
well, maybe the aux files might be plain text. Let's take a look. I didn't actually look in the aux files. The other ones are not, but let's see if the aux is. Here's an aux file. Let's cat aux. aux.1109.
It's a directory.
Yeah,
What?
it's a directory. Yeah, you got
It's a directory. Oh, well, I didn't know. Let's see. I did not look at the aux file. I wasn't interested, but let's take a look now. How about CD instead of CC? That might work a little better. All right, CD. Come on, stop messing with me. Stop doing what I tell you to do and do what I want you to do. All right, so let's see if I can make this fit on the screen better. All right, now ls-l. Well, there's a whole bunch of these files. Okay, 3. Okay, let's see what those in there. Cat. I guess it is plain text, and it looks a whole lot just typical syslog stuff, doesn't it? And then here's some kind of thread. Oh yeah, that looks like
process dump.
looks like a sort of it's a process chain. You know, I forget what they call this thing. But okay, basic information about why something crashed.
Yeah.
That makes sense. like what you'd see in a little box that says, we're going to tell Microsoft your printing crashed. It gives you about this much information, just basic clues about which module crashed and which module called it a stack trace. That's what I'm thinking about.
And each of those files is for a day? That's a lot of files.
Yeah, so apparently a lot of things are failing. So I guess, in the old days, if you opened the PC event log, there were like 100 crashing things every day. And it looks like this must be true in the Mac. There must be a bunch of stuff crashing that I'm not knowing about. So it would probably be fun to like dig through this and find out what's really going on. Yeah?
There was a very interesting vulnerability that someone reported to Apple maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah.
It was basically macOS Sierra 10.12 was logging the length of the password using Syslog. And
Really?
so the length of
Awesome.
the password was in the log if you look.
That's awesome.
And someone found it, they
Yeah.
reported it, and Apple fixed it in 10.12.1, and
Oh.
someone put it on their whole thing.
But I thought I was so happy when I think it was one of the major banks, Wells Fargo, started logging the password in the log. After I submitted a vuln report to them, demonstrating a Trojan in their app, they modified, one of Wells Fargo, it was another bank, they modified it so their app logged to the, I think it's to the log. It was bloody awesome. Their whole password right there in the log. They took it out in the next version though. It was only that way for about a month. Anyway, so then there's an audit logs. You can go here and see these things and you open them with this PR audit thing. So you, in principle, you can look in there. I didn't find much useful, but that's what they say. But I found some log entries here. And those are in, oh, they are in here. Okay, private var audit. Most of this stuff is boring, but here's how it works. You open it with PR audit, and now you have objects that have a header number and a trailer number. This is like Microsoft event log. So this is event number 102, the item number 102, and here's the end of it. And in the middle, it tells you what it is. So this is some kind of audit recovery, crash recovery. Most of them were meaningless, but I found a couple fun ones. Here's where I erased a flash drive. So header 131, it authorized disk management erase. This is erasing a drive, which is the kind of thing someone might do. You might want to find that. Here's a failed logout attempt. I thought that was pretty good. I typed my password wrong like 2 times in a row a few days ago, so it was still there. Verify password for record type users, failure, unknown error. So anyway, there's a few examples in your book of similar things. A few things in this audit log actually make sense and are useful, but most things don't seem to end up in the audit log that would really help you. Some things you can find in here are connections to network services like iCloud, Time Machine, and iTunes, and those imply that somewhere there's a device with a backup of the system, which is bloody awesome because you can go seize that device and get more evidence, like Dropbox. And Microsoft, as you know, Apple constantly tries to get you to use iCloud, which will put a copy of everything on their cloud servers in Microsoft Azure, which they don't tell you, but that's where they're going. Because their own servers are too expensive, so they rent them from Microsoft, which if I was Microsoft, I'd be trumpeting this, but maybe they had a deal to like not embarrass them. And the Time Machine stores things on a local USB drive, and a lot of people use that. And iTunes stores backups of your media on and some apps, I think, on your local machine. So all those are good. Those would mean there's something else around to seize. You have scheduled services. For some reason, Apple did not use Unix cron. They made their own thing called LaunchD. So you have a bunch of things called agents here. And in there, you will find these configuration files telling you a list of commands to launch at startup. It is not like Windows, where there are hundreds of official ways to launch something at startup. It's more like Unix, where there's a reasonable number of ways to launch something at startup, and you pretty much have to use them, as far as people know. And so you have the same kind of properties you have in a modern Windows system. There are things that will be kept alive, which means when it crashes, it'll automatically restart. There are things that will start the task if something's modified, things that start only on mount, and things that will exit after a period of time, you know, just like on Windows. There's a variety of ways to make things launch at different times and have different numbers of restarts and such. Yeah?
What do they use WatchPath primarily for?
What's that?
What do they use WatchPath primarily for? Is that like
I don't know.
some of the things kind of making sure that system files aren't changed?
It's a good question. I don't know. It seems like you could make a sort of tripwire thing out of it. I'm not aware of that one being on Windows. So it might be a good thing to learn about, and I don't know the answer. And then there's application installers. This is the one I was looking for before. So these are the receipts, which we mentioned earlier. Every time you install an app, it puts 2 things here, just like paper receipts, a bill of materials and plist. I don't know where they got this idea. The bill of materials lists all the files in the app. And the plist has the date and the file access control lists. Windows does this with drivers, but it doesn't do it for every app. But anyway, that's pretty handy. Everything here, I found all these things for Wireshark. And as you may know, when you install Wireshark, it installs about 6 programs, like exports and stuff. And each one of them has a BOM and a plist file. So you totally know when it was installed and exactly which files were included in it. All right, and so here's the general summary of this stuff. If you want timeline evidence, then you're looking for timestamps and many, many things. Syslog things have timestamps, wireless connections are here, cron jobs, which I think exist in Mac. They're not used by the operating system much. And you have just a lot of things are out there that have timestamps, of course. You can use them to make a timeline. Here's where you find shares, if things are being shared. If you have a static image, here's stuff you can find like the version and the IP addresses and the date of the installation and such. And here's where you find artifacts showing the 10 most recently run applications, which is kind of nice. They've got some kind of list for that. And here we've got things that were moved in the trash. And then one thing I wonder about Macs, in my experience, Macs do not seem to ever automatically empty the trash. You seem to have to do it manually after things get full.
Seems like the trash is always, even if you're doing trashing.
Yeah, but Windows will automatically delete it to keep it down to like 10% of the disk. And Macs do not seem to do that. You seem to have to really manually empty the trash in my experience. Anyway, so yeah, here's persistence. Here's the auto start extensibility points. Things started by the system, daemons started by the system, and legacy system startup items. There's a few of those start points that are good. And here's who's been logging in. Authentication logs, file system logs, and a temp folder with the current logged in users and processes, ways to find out who's been logging in. All right. So, you know, it's a lot of lore, but I always learn something new when I go through the Mac. The Mac is much more of a mystery than a PC as far as free and open source information. All right. So where it's a backtrace for a crashed app. And indeed, something is crashing 6 times a day on my Mac. Maybe I'll care someday. Probably not. Anyway. As long as it's not something I'm using, I really don't care. But I use PCs long enough to just be used to that. It's that thing called crash, that's it. All right.
I thought it was the aux one.
But it's not a valid one, right?
Well, now you got me worried. I think this is a folder, and that's what's in there. Maybe I shouldn't be grading this one. You're right. Let's go back up and look. In fact, it's right here, isn't it? That's it. And that was this thing with a name like that. But it was in that folder.
Yeah.
So you're right. This was a backtrace. I think 2 of them might be backtraces. This crash recovery thing was back here someplace. There. This is the audit trail for the crash recovery, and that other thing is also created. So there are 2 right answers there. Neat. So I'm not going to grade that one because it's giving me a headache. And I hope no one's under the impression that I know all this stuff. A lot of this stuff is new to me too, so please don't throw too much at me. So, yeah. Right, but all right. How the log file from long ago. Here, I think there's only one right answer. I'll quit at 25. All right, that's the BB file that claims to be from the future. It does that because it's really from the past. Now, that's the kind of stuff
Why is it not
I
A?
expect from Microsoft.
What's
But
not A? What's A again?
the aux is the crash dumps.
No, the A.
The A?
Letter A. Choice.
Oh, this
The
one.
first choice.
Oh, that's an ordinary syslog file.
Yeah.
But except this one is for user 501 and not the group.
Okay.
Anyway, this one here is that thing that is a year in the past, so they put the wrong year on it to indicate that. You kind of wonder why they don't fix this stuff, but anyway, maybe it's new or something. I'm sure if you knew enough about every version of Mac, you might understand some reason why it's this way.
Or maybe there's an older type of log file that does the date that they have
Yeah.
to keep and hide. And then now they do this with like the new version.
There are reasons for all this stuff, you know. I know in Microsoft, I actually knew enough to know some of the reasons. And some will make you sick, but there are reasons why things ended up this way. Anyway, so what item will have entries like that? Okay. This has only one answer, and I've even figured it out. So I'll quit at 45
I
here.
don't know why it is that. is one you did on your wireless,
It-
I mean, your authentication.
This is my erasing a thumb drive. This is disk management erase, and that goes in the ordinary syslog here. This is what user 501 did. User 501 erased the disk partition. So this is the plain old syslog, which is stored in things like that. All right, so let's see who got the most right. Well, let me just turn off the recording because that's not that recordable. 121, chapter 13B.